Katie. I'm the Volunteer and Community Events Coordinator here at Meewasin. Before I begin, I just want to let everybody know this is being recorded and it will be sent out to everybody after, as well as um, some other attachments that we talk about throughout the presentation. Um, I do want to acknowledge that Meewasin is on Treaty 6 territory and homeland of the Métis, and we humbly acknowledge the traditional caretakers of this place. This is a really cool presentation. Giselle is a GIS analyst here at Meewasin, and she's going to be walking us through a huge project that she has been working on for the last um, number of years. So I'm going to pass it over to Giselle to get started. As you have questions, please throw them in the chat. I love that everybody is muted right now. We will have time at the end to do questions and all of that. So just keep them in there, and then we'll get to them at the end. If anything comes up and we don't answer your question for whatever reason, our contact information will also be available at the end, so you can send those emails over with those questions to them. So without further ado, Giselle, this is your turn.
Well, thank you, Katie. Appreciate it. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. And maybe, Katie, if you can confirm you can see my screen. Great. So as Katie said, my name is Giselle Hooey, and I'm a GIS analyst with the Meewasin Valley Authority based here in Saskatoon. Today, I'm going to give you a first look at the State of the Valley report, which is produced by Meewasin. The current State of the Valley report was actually released yesterday, and this webinar is giving you an exclusive look at this report. So today's webinar will cover a brief background of Meewasin, talk about what the State of the Valley report is and why we do it, talk about some updates made in this report iteration, show you some highlights and insights found in the report, and also highlight some new Meewasin initiatives showcased in this report iteration. So as Katie said, a little bit of background about Meewasin if some on the call aren't familiar. Meewasin is a steward of the South Saskatchewan River Valley in the region. We're a nonprofit organization and regional conservation authority, and we manage several natural sites and an extensive network of trails throughout the city of Saskatoon and into the surrounding rural area. Our mandate is to ensure that the River Valley stays healthy and vibrant and balances human use and conservation, not just for our present generations, but for the future as well. And Meewasin is a Cree word that means it is beautiful. And as Katie already mentioned, all of the work that we do at Meewasin is on Treaty 6 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis people. And as part of our efforts towards reconciliation, we want to honor that vast knowledge held by the traditional caretakers of the land as we steward it today. Meewasin began in 1979 through provincial legislation, and today our jurisdiction comprises of over 6,700 hectares in and around the city of Saskatoon and into the rural municipality of Corman Park. We manage several urban and rural sites, as well as an extensive network of over 108 kilometers of trail. We strive to enhance biodiversity and also conserve these unique landscapes while simultaneously promoting year-round accessibility through our public programming, interpretation, and the maintenance of public sites and trails. And our organization has a three-part mandate to conserve, develop, and educate while working towards a vision of a world-class corridor for the Meewasin Valley. So what is the State of the Valley report? Some of you may have read it before and some of it may be new to you. So just a background is that the State of the Valley report provides a 5-year review of progress, changes, and challenges in respect to our mandate to conserve, develop, and educate with a valley-wide lens. So in addition to assessing progress metrics related to the Meewasin Valley, the report also looks at a broader analysis of an extended 2-kilometer study area. And this allows for us to analyze influencing external pressures and ecology, both adjacent to and connecting to the Meewasin Valley. And it also allows for a comparison of changes and effects within and outside the Meewasin Valley. So Meewasin has been producing the State of the Valley report since 1998, and it's repeated on a 5-year cycle. The current iteration of the report synthesizes progress made in the time period of April 2019 to March 2024. So it's a bit of a summary of what occurred in that 5-year period. This report's completed in multiple phases, including pre-planning and preliminary data compilation, which began in 2021 and led up to the end of the reporting period in March 24. Phase 2 included additional data gathering and intensive analysis, which continued into spring 25. And the final phase of the report writing took us to the end of 2025, with the report being published just this week. So as Katie said, it does take some time to produce this report. The report is organized into the overarching themes of health, balance, fit, and vibrancy. These themes were first identified in the Moriyama 100-year Conceptual Master Plan, which was written in 1978. The health theme includes a broad analysis of ecological factors. So these include things like land use and land cover, protections, biodiversity and conservation land management. Balance relates to the provision of safe public access to trail, green spaces, and natural areas, while fit and vibrancy relates to stewardship, education, and community engagement. So prior to this reporting cycle, Meewasin undertook a targeted effort to enhance and advance the report, work that will continue in 2026 and beyond. Updates in this report cycle include a more reader-friendly format, which is focused on synthesized data outcomes. A report supplement is available online for readers interested in the technical part of the details, including the report methodology and a full appendices of maps, tables, and figures supporting the analysis outcomes. The new report also incorporates icons that more clearly communicate data trends since the last report. These help readers quickly understand what the trend has been since that last report, and also what some of the progress has been over time using cumulative or historical comparisons. So an example of this trends, on the top of the screen on the left, we can see a graphic that shows that there's been over 10 million trail visits for the current reporting period, with a green icon that shows that's a positive trend since the last report. To the right in the same graphic, it shows that by comparison, there have been 17 million trail visits in the last 10 years, with an orange icon to denote that it is a retrospective or a historical data point. So you'll see those incorporated within the report. We've also begun to explore additional data and metrics to better understand the impact of the Meewasin Valley to the community, as well as visitors from outside the region. And we are continuing to work with partners to seek more information and data to expand this understanding in future reports. The report also communicates progress made in respect to Meewasin's goals and strategies, while providing more detail on current progress, as well as the advancement of these goals and strategies in future. These plans are linked in the online report, where readers can directly click and explore these strategies to learn more about what guides Meewasin's work. And some of those documents that we talk about are listed on the screen on the left, and in the report you can click on those links and you can read them for yourself. Another feature of this report are case studies within each section that tell the stories behind the stats. These features showcase the multifaceted scope and impact of Meewasin's projects on the landscape, and we'll touch on these a little bit later in the presentation. And then lastly, the report also includes a QR code that connects readers to an online version of the report, which provides readers a gateway to readily access the resources mentioned in the report and in today's preview. So to get in a little bit onto the report content, a highlight of some of the overall trends that we see threaded through the report and the data of the current report include things like the continued growth of the Saskatoon region. This saw a population increase of 7.6% in Saskatoon's Census Metropolitan Area, or CMA for short. This growth outpaced the national average growth of CMAs across Canada in the same period, which was just over 6%. This growth trend continued despite the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic, which started in 2020. The pandemic presented some unique challenges in providing a safe and accessible Meewasin Valley. And while initial pandemic-related closures of facilities, schools, and limited public interactions led to a temporary decline in overall engagement, we found that participation not only stabilized, but it actually increased to beyond pre-pandemic levels. Also contributing to the growth seen in this period were Meewasin's advancements in educational and tourism experiences programming, which I'll talk about later on in this presentation as well. So highlights of some of this growth included a surge in the use of Meewasin Valley both during and post-pandemic. Trail usage doubled on some of the busiest sections of trail, and the Beaver Creek Conservation Area actually experienced an overall increase of 40% visitation since 2019. These were large increases compared to similar data on park visitation reported across the country. An example being a report that's put out by the park people, which calculated an overall increase of about 15% in park visitation across Canadian municipalities. So we can see that some of the growth we saw in this region was quite exceptional. Post-pandemic, we also saw a rise in survey respondents who agreed that these trails and natural areas support physical and mental health, and also they felt Meewasin is an important contributor to their quality of life overall. So these increases not only showed the renewed appreciation for nature, physical and mental well-being, but they also underscore the vital role that the Meewasin Valley played in offering opportunities for wellness and connection to the land during a global crisis. Despite the pandemic's challenges, Meewasin continued its work to grow its reach, evolve its strategic direction, and enhance collaborative partnerships. A new section in the report details partnerships, collaborations, as well as outreach Meewasin undertakes to connect with the community and advancement of these initiatives. Regional partnerships with organizations like the City of Saskatoon, Saskatoon Tribal Council, Saskatoon Public Schools, and Greater Saskatoon Catholic Schools were established or renewed in this period. And beyond the region, Meewasin also expanded its reach to collaborate with partners to grow recognition of Meewasin's conservation efforts and contribute to sustainability strategies. Some examples of these collaborative successes include the establishment of the Urban Wildlife Information Network, or UN for short, in Saskatoon. Saskatoon was the second city in Canada to implement this program. This was a large collaborative effort between many groups such as Meewasin, the City of Saskatoon, University of Saskatchewan, Wild About Saskatoon, the Saskatoon Wildlife Federation, CPAWS, the Saskatoon Nature Society, Nature Saskatchewan, Wanuskewin Heritage Park, and the Saskatoon Forestry Farm Zoo and Park. Another example of collaborative successes is the creation of the Canadian Prairies Prescribed Fire Exchange, or CPPFE for short, which is featured in detail within the report. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. In producing this report, a report-specific theme of thinking globally, locally was chosen to reflect Meewasin's advancements and the trends seen in this reporting period. So the associated graphic on the screen shows how Meewasin's work links to and supports the achievement of our funding partner strategies, but it also has a cascading effect, contributing to the achievement of broader regional, provincial, national, and global strategies shown in the diagram. The online report is interactive, and readers can actually explore the graphic to learn more about these strategies and initiatives for themselves. Each section in the report also gives readers a behind-the-scenes look at how planning and partnering is linked to actions to bring these initiatives to life on the landscape. Some examples shown in the report include Meewasin's regional restoration efforts, including restoration planting and prescribed fire, that support local strategies like the City of Saskatoon's Green Infrastructure Strategy, while also contributing to global strategies like the United Nations Decade on Restoration, which aims to prevent, halt, and reverse the degradation of ecosystems. Also showcased in the report is Meewasin's work with Environment and Climate Change Canada, the Government of Saskatchewan Ministry of Environment, and partners like the City of Saskatoon to screen sites within the Meewasin Valley for protected or conserved areas designation. This work resulted in an additional 640 hectares of Meewasin sites added to the provincial, national, and global protected and conserved areas databases. This work contributes to Canadian and global goals of 30% of lands protected or conserved by 2030. So moving on to some of the content. Within the health section of the report, the majority of indicators have seen steady or positive progress. The largest analysis undertaken for the report is the assessment of land use and land cover within the Meewasin Valley and the study area. The analysis looks at over 430 square kilometers of land area and categorizes land types and uses considering a gradient of human affected intensities. The upper categories shown on the diagram on the screen include built environments, which is shown in gray. This category includes things like urban and rural developments, roads, industrial, and other developed areas. Enhanced environments, shown in blue, include green spaces like grass parks, urban afforested areas, outdoor recreation sports fields, and altered aquatic systems, so things like constructed wetlands, for example. Agricultural environments, shown in yellow, include crop and tame forage lands. and native and naturalized environments shown in green include native or naturalized grasslands, forest and shrublands, and native or naturalized aquatic systems. The analysis found that the proportion of native and naturalized land cover in the study area has remained steady since the last report. It was noted that there was a difference in cover proportions between the study area and the Meewasin Valley, with the study area experiencing a slight decrease in native and naturalized cover, while the Meewasin Valley saw a slight increase in the same time period. Notable land cover changes detected in the study area include things like the restoration of cropland to native grassland species for plains bison at the Wanuskewin Heritage Park, the alteration of naturally occurring wetlands for agricultural purposes in dry years, and river changes due to channelization and fluctuating levels. The charts on this screen show the comparison of cover types within the valley versus the study area. And then also an assessment of land protections found that within the study area of the native and naturalized lands remaining, only 30% of those are under some form of protection. The majority of that 30% is located within Meewasin Valley or jurisdiction. You can view the report to learn more details about these protections, the land use and land cover types, and the report also includes a breakdown of cover types by subcategory and their definitions if you're interested in learning more about that. Another significant analysis component in the report is the assessment of species in the study area. Over 230,000 species records were analyzed for this report, with overall species observations, rare or at-risk species, and invasive or problematic species assessed and included in the report. We saw a rise in both the number and diversity of species reported, as well as a notable increase of 250% in citizen science reporting since the last report. These increases reflect the growth of Meewasin's monitoring program, expansion of publicly accessible databases like iNaturalist and eBird by both citizen science and also agencies such as Meewasin. So this data helps to inform Meewasin site-specific plans and initiatives, which are linked in the online report. Another interesting trend that was noted during the analysis was related to invasive species. So similar to other species reporting, the reporting of invasive species has also increased, including the diversity of invasive species reported. However, data shows a decrease in reported observation counts. An example of a count would be the number of stems of invasive plants recorded in a patch. So meaning that we are seeing more variety of species being reported, but less of them being recorded. The causes and impacts of this trend are unclear at this time, and they require additional monitoring and analysis in future years to identify what the sources are of this conflicting trend. And some of the examples of biodiversity seen in the region include observations of little brown bat, monarch butterfly, piping plover, red-headed woodpecker, and whooping crane. And these are listed as Species at Risk Act or SARA endangered species reported in the study area in this period. The report supplement includes a full species list as well as a map showing the density of species observations in the Meewasin Valley in the study area, where you can see the largest density of a species being recorded in the region. Additionally, Meewasin's conservation land management program continued to grow in this period. Meewasin employs a variety of land management techniques to enhance grasslands and habitat quality, and these include things like prescribed fire, targeted conservation grazing, restoration activities, including native seed production and plantings, as well as the management of invasive species. Despite the challenges experienced by the pandemic, Meewasin was able to expand its complement of monitoring techniques, including the establishment of permanent aquatic monitoring plots, the adoption of autonomous monitoring devices such as trail cameras and acoustics recorders, as well as targeted species surveys and health assessments that provide foundational information needed for us to make conservation management decisions. Items that trended down in this period include the amount of restoration planting, which was affected by gathering size and restrictions, as we typically have additional seasonal staff and volunteers to help support this program. The conservation grazing program also saw a slight decline due to pandemic restrictions and other program-related factors. Highlights in this section include the nearly doubling of land hectares treated with prescribed fire on Meewasin sites as part of Meewasin's collaboration with the Canadian Prairies Prescribed Fire Exchange. Additionally, over 1 million total invasive species were treated, including over 900,000 European buckthorn as part of our long-term European buckthorn control program. Additionally, nearly 300,000 beetles targeting leafy spurge have been released in the Meewasin Valley as part of a biocontrol program for this invasive plant. The health analysis completed for this report is also used to inform our site-specific reporting, such as baseline inventories and resource management plans, which are linked in the report, and you can view those for yourself. So moving on to the balance section, the importance of resources like public access to green spaces, natural areas, and trail connection was really highlighted during the COVID-19 pandemic, and Meewasin has progressed its work to enhance these areas for enjoyment in years to come. Overall, trail and access statistics remain largely steady or positive since the last report. In addition to the substantial rise in trail visits I already mentioned, we also saw that the amount of Meewasin Trail has increased and also that the amount of trail per capita is keeping pace with the population growth that I already mentioned in the region. Meewasin has undertaken several trail projects detailed within the report. So these include projects like the Southwest Trail project, which is shown in the photo in the screen, as well as the enhancement of aging trails within the Meewasin Trail system. These projects help us address modern accessibility and design standards, keep up with a growing population, and better serve visitors both within the community and beyond the region. So you can explore more about these projects within the report. Historically, the State of the Valley report has also quantified the amount of green space contained within the study area. And this analysis considers more traditional green spaces like formal manicured lawns and parks and sport or recreation areas, public playgrounds, as well as more formal green spaces such as boulevard spaces, plantings, and gardens. Excuse me. So, in complement to these spaces, there's also a host of native and naturalized areas made available in the region for public access. These areas are managed or co-managed by a variety of groups, including municipalities like the City of Saskatoon Naturalized Parks Program, and also by conservation groups like Meewasin and Ducks Unlimited, among others. In order to better understand the provision of these spaces in the study area and the Meewasin Valley, these areas were introduced into the report analysis to close that data and representation gap. The new data points for native and naturalized spaces are expressed separately in the chart that you see on the screen. So analysis showed that although the amount of green space has risen since the last report, the amount is slightly lagging the population growth when looking at per capita statistics. As seen in the chart, the metrics have also been updated to express data as hectares per 1,000 persons, which has become a reporting standard across other jurisdictions. For some context on the provision of green space, similar data reported by the Park People Group for member municipalities across Canada shows that the City of Saskatoon had 4.1 hectares per person in 2024, while the national average was about 7.94 hectares per person. Keep in mind this data isn't exactly an apples to apples comparison, as catchment areas and green space category definitions do slightly differ from the State of the Valley. However, it does give a bit of context as to how the Meewasin Valley and study area measure and contribute to these statistics in the region and across the country. Another point of interest in looking at this data is that 90% of publicly accessible native, naturalized, and green spaces in the study area are provided by Meewasin managed or co-managed sites. This statistics provides context to the important contribution Meewasin makes in the provision and management of publicly accessible spaces within the region. And that leads us to fit and vibrancy. This theme covers a spectrum of community engagement. Access to creative, safe engagement and accessible programming continued to be a cornerstone for Meewasin during the pandemic. Many indicators in this section have remained steady or positive in spite of pandemic impacts. Visitation at the Meewasin Rink experienced a decline as a result of both pandemic-related factors as well as non-pandemic factors, such as a 26% decrease in average operational days due to weather conditions. Overall, the rink still provided a fun winter escape for over 70,000 visitors during this period. As I already mentioned, overall engagement and visitation at sites like Beaver Creek experienced a sharp increase after the lifting of restrictions and have remained high since that time. Several initiatives contributed to the sustained growth we see in this period, including the introduction of innovative programming such as new digital education resources and self-guided tours, which helped the community stay connected to the Meewasin Valley during the pandemic. It was noted that the decline seen in in-person educational programming was actually offset by the use of the digital education resources. Nearly 15,000 students were reached through digital programming alone during the pandemic, which led to actually more students being engaged this period than even before the pandemic, which is an amazing testament to how impactful these resources are. Another amazing story featured in this report is the success of the volunteer program. I've already mentioned how volunteers contribute to Meewasin's work, and the report illustrates how big that impact has really been. Since the Friends of the Valley volunteer program was launched, our volunteer participation has doubled. Our volunteers have made over 100,000 contributions toward conserving and enhancing the Meewasin Valley. These contributions include things like plantings, tree protection, invasive species management, and valley cleanup. And I know many of you tuning in today have been a part of this program, and we're so grateful to have such a dedicated group of people to help us advance this work. So thank you. Another new component in the Fit and Vibrancy theme is the Tourism Experiences feature, which provides a snapshot of the impact these newly formalized programs have made to Meewasin's complement of conservation, education, and outreach initiatives. Since 2021, Meewasin has revamped some existing experiences like dark skies and also launched several new signature experiences, including Naughty by Nature and grazing dinners. These experiences bring ecotourism to the Meewasin Valley while also deepening people's connection with Meewasin's mission. This suite of experiences has seen year-over-year growth. An analysis shows that nearly 1 out of 5 attendees are actually from outside the region, including national as well as international visitors. This demonstrates the attraction these programs have not only to Meewasin Valley residents, but to also a broader audience that isn't already familiar with Meewasin. Another accomplishment highlighted in the report is the achievement of Green Step Sustainable Tourism. This certification is a third-party certification which encompasses over 80 sustainability criteria ranging from habitat preservation to socio-cultural responsibility and operational sustainability. Examples of assessment items include having sustainability management systems and action plans, participation in community projects, protecting and enhancing cultural heritage, among a host of other items. Meewasin is the first organization in Saskatchewan to have become Green Step certified, leading the way in becoming recognized for sustainable tourism in the prairies. I would encourage you to visit the online report to explore more about not only these signature experiences, but you can also learn more about Meewasin's Green Step certification. I mentioned in the introduction that this report aims to plug our readers into the stories behind the stats. And some of the stories you can read about in the report include things like a snapshot of the multi-year enhancements at the Kingsman Riverfront. This feature showcases the kind of partner-driven collaborative projects that have been undertaken to enhance this cultural fixture on the South Saskatchewan River. The feature also gives readers an inside look of how Meewasin's development and review process works when projects are undertaken in the Meewasin Valley. You can also learn about how the Canadian Prairies Prescribed Fire Exchange, or CPPFE for short, has transformed the prairie grasslands and parklands through partnership. This feature discusses how the CPPFE has used collaboration in pursuit of its goals to expand capacity, increase awareness about prescribed fire, and strengthen research opportunities about the effects of prescribed fire. So you can learn how important this work or how this important work has increased prescribed fire application in the region by 230% since the inception of CPPFE, which is really amazing. And then also showcased is Meewasin's Dark Skies experience, which I already mentioned. These special events focus on learning about the night sky, nocturnal wildlife, and how light pollution affects habitats. They blend conservation science, technology, education, and fun into an interactive experience for all ages. Another important project that was started in 2019 was the Indigenous Experiences Project, which utilizes physical interpretive signage and interactive online content to share linkages between Indigenous knowledge and the landscape at the Northeast Swale. Meewasin consulted with local organizations, First Nation and Métis communities, and elders and knowledge keepers who gifted these stories and knowledge to bring this project to the landscape. Readers can use the links in the report to take a virtual tour of the Northeast Swale, experience these stories, and view the videos sharing Indigenous worldviews. Throughout this presentation, I've invited you to experience the State of the Valley report for yourself, and now's your chance. So the QR code shown on the screen links you to the freshly published report, the report supplement, and all of the content links I talked about in this webinar. I've given you just a bit of a preview of what you can find in the report, but there is a ton of additional content that you can explore by yourself to learn more about the Valley and also about Meewasin. And Katie will also be able to send out the links to where the report lives on the web too. So before closing out, I want to express my gratitude to those that have contributed in many ways to this report. The State of the Valley report is a large project, like Katie mentioned, that relies on the collaboration of many people to complete. I'd like to thank my co-author, Elena Chan, and our graphic designer, Jess Flair, for their contributions in making this report come to life. Additionally, a host of internal contributors and external partners provided a wealth of project support, technical contribution, data, and valuable feedback. These include members of Meewasin's board of directors, advisory committees, funding partners like the City of Saskatoon, University of Saskatchewan, and Government of Saskatchewan, as well as a host of other groups and organizations that help to inform and involve this report. I also want to thank the dedicated team of Meewasin staff and management, many of whom I know are listening in today. Their support was really pivotal in making this report. So thank you. And I hope that you can all view the work that our team has done within this report too, because everyone plays a really important part in making all of this work possible. Thank you so much. Again, thank you to all of you for joining us today. I'll hand it back to Katie to field any questions and close out the webinar.
Thank you so much, Giselle. That was awesome. There is a few questions in the chat that were answered, but we'll just quickly run them through again. So David with the Saskatchewan Nature Society asked if Meewasin uses the spring, summer, and fall bird counts as a part of this report. Rennie answered that yes, we do, and Giselle's also agreeing with that.
Yes.
And then the other question kind of to that was bird numbers have gone down across North America in the last several decades. Does the same trend show? And he also answered saying we are seeing similar trends, but haven't done a deeper analysis of the data. So that was awesome. Thank you so much, Rennie, for answering those. I will send the hyperlink out to the report, like Giselle mentioned, so that we won't have to use the QR code if you don't have the technology to use the QR code. Oh my goodness, questions. Sam wants to know what's the hardest part of comparing the new data to the 2018 report.
The hardest part about comparing data to 2018, that's a really great question. I think that in advancing the report, we did do some things like freshen up and advance our land use and land cover classifications. And also when we look at other analysis, if we make advancements in the analysis in order to be an apples and apples comparison and be accurate in our trend assessment since the last report, we do have to do additional analysis. So one of the things that we did for the land use and land cover, for example, is not only when we create the new classification with the modifications, we also have to map back what those classification changes were to 2018, and basically do an assessment in order to say, what would the land cover have been in 2018? Did it actually change, or did we just reclassify this information? And that allows us to ensure that we're accurately documenting the trends and changes, and that these changes aren't just attributed to the fact that we reclassified or made a new subcategory or something like that with the data. So that's kind of one of the reasons why it does take a significant amount of time to look at those changes, and why we are really intentional when we make the advancements and updates to make sure that it's going to work and to speak apples and apples to our last report iteration. Great question.
So thank you. Another question is, what was the most surprising or exciting positive trend you discovered while analyzing the last 5 years?
Well, I'll probably throw it back to the item I mentioned about how even though we had all of these pandemic impacts, the advancements and the participation levels that we saw during the pandemic and post-pandemic actually meant that we still advanced in spite of that from the last 5 years. So I use the example of the education resources, and that was a really great example of how our staff here was able to kind of pivot and make sure that we were still connecting with people in the valley, even though we couldn't in person connect, and it made such a big impact. So it was really heartening to see that we didn't actually sustain dips in those numbers, and we were still able to make those connections with people in the valley. So really great question.
Thanks, Sam, for that. Yeah, wonderful question. Jesse has a question for you, Giselle, as well. You mentioned the amount of green space / capita Valley is at currently. Is there a target amount of green space that Meewasin is aiming for?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jesse. I think that in looking at those numbers, I know that we have targets to say keep up with pace of population growth within the valley, and that's kind of the more formal target that we've set within State of the Valley. I think that we also contribute to, say, the City of Saskatoon's goals of green space per 1,000 people as well. But I would say that, we maybe don't have a specific number just for Meewasin in mind at this time, but it is something that we can definitely think about, and again, working with the city to contribute to that amount for the city as well.
Awesome. A question from Linda is, how is the lack of water coming from Baker and lower water levels affecting Meewasin's biodiversity?
Oh, that's a really great question. I think that's a really broad question, and I would say that we need to do some more analysis to look at that. Definitely, one of the things that we noticed in the analysis is in the southern part, south of Saskatoon, how much of that fluctuating river level and sandbars have been created because of those fluctuating levels and some of the dryness that we've had in the last few years. I think that there would need to be further analysis in order to give a good comment about how that's affecting biodiversity. And I think that some of those effects we may see going forward in some of our site-specific reporting, especially in that southern South Saskatoon rural site reporting that we do. So really great question, but I don't know if I can answer that on this call today, Linda. Thank you. That's a big
One
one.
last question from Sam. She promises, if you had unlimited resources for the next report, what is one thing in the valley you weren't tracking yet but would love to?
Oh my goodness. Wow, that's a really good one. I think that there would be more information that we would like to do in terms of the species and the biodiversity, some of those questions, even like Linda mentioned. Also, being able to do some more in-depth analysis on the continuity of natural and naturalized sites within the valley, and some ground truthing of our data. So those are things that we've kind of aspired to maybe do in future analysis, but we do have to be mindful of our data availability to make sure that if we do those things that it is as accurate as it can be, and then also like time and resources that it takes. So it's definitely something that we have our eye on in the future though.
Awesome. I don't see any other questions in the chat currently, but if you do have any, feel free to throw them in there right now. But if you think of something later as you're reading the report, like I said, you'll have access to my email, and you can send me those questions. I can pass them along to Giselle as well. A huge thank you to Giselle for doing this. It was a great webinar. But yeah, if there's no other questions, that's all I have for this afternoon. So thank you all for attending. This was our third webinar. I want to thank the Grandy family for their support, their continuous support of Meewasin and allowing us to do these webinars. So thank you all.
Yeah. Thank you so much.